Hello and welcome to iamrivenous' channel. King of the Summit and Yunkui Tales are two new disk drives that have crashed into version 2.0. And you're probably wondering,
hey, I'm Rivenous, what happened to your voice?
And more importantly, should I burn my precious battery charge on farming these? Or are these just bait, like the clickbait which got you to click on this video? Well, lucky for you, you clicked on this video which will pristinely answer that question. Because I am Rivenous, am a spreadsheet god. Anyway, back to the actual I am Rivenous.
Thank you, I am Rivenous. I am the GOAT, I went to lose gaming, and today let's answer whether or not the two new sets are worth farming for and for whom. Let's begin with the new sheer damage focused set Yunkui Tales. And if you intend on equipping this on any character not named yixuan as of right now, the name might as well be No Damage Tales because you will hit like a wet noodle. While it does give you a 12% crit rate, both the 2-piece bonus as well as the sheer damage bonus are completely wasted as we do not have an HP nor sheer damage scaler outside yixuan yet. The units who can at least in theory utilize this the best are low energy cost units, namely Miyabi, Anton, Ellen and our beloved cat Neko. Unfortunately, all of them have a better set available, which makes farming the set specifically for those units honestly just somewhat questionable. Is it useless? Well, no, it is better than no set, but it is also outclassed by basically every other viable set option on all of them. TLDR being, it is very good on yixuan, and as of right now, that's about it. I also do want to mention, however, that the 10% sheer damage bonus on the 4-piece set is a unique multiplier and not a simple damage bonus, which makes this bonus and set much stronger than it looks on paper. Or, well, your screen in this case. Speaking of yixuan, if you're interested in how to play her, please check out my XXL in-depth guide right here. My editor and I spent over 3 weeks working on this, so we really would appreciate it if you give it a watch. Anyway, instead let's focus now on the new stunner set, because this is where it gets interesting. That is because a 4-piece King of the Summit is directly competing not only with Shockstar Disco, but more importantly also Swing Jazz, Astral Voice and Protopunk as viable 4-piece options. Daze after all is only useful if it leads to another stun window and only if the damage gained from that said stun window outweighs the buff you would get throughout the fight.
Let's first talk about what the set actually does.
The 2-piece provides a 6% daze increase, and this one is special because it is technically combat daze. At least in theory, because as of right now, there is no out of combat daze, which means it simply behaves as every other source of daze does right now. This could however change in the future. The 4-piece provides a 15-second long 15% crit damage bonus to the entire team, and said crit damage bonus actually becomes 30% if the wearer has at least 50% crit rate. Which, to be fair, is actually not that difficult. However, the bonus is also locked behind another condition, that being the equipper needs to be a stun agent, and the bonus is then activated when casting an EX special or a chain attack. This essentially means every stunner in the game can make use of the set at its full value with a near permanent uptime on it, especially during the stun window. Knowing that, let's frame a question. Does a permanent 30% crit damage outweigh one possible additional stun window? The answer can really be boiled down to usually yes. A large portion of the player base does already run a 4-piece Protopunk, Swing Jazz or Astral Voice even on their stunners without actually losing a stun window in the first place. So why would Summit now suddenly be different? Which also means I actually kinda baited you. There are two other questions we should answer instead. First, does 30% crit damage outweigh the 15% damage bonus gained from Swing Jazz or Protopunk, or the up to 24% from Astral Voice? And secondly, is it possible to gain one additional stun window by using maybe a 4-piece Shockstar and a 2-piece Summit? Let's keep this short for the interested. Yes, Summit will likely be the best in slot set for all stunners going forwards, but there at least is a little bit of nuance I want to talk about. If you're interested in that, keep watching, otherwise, thank you very much for watching, see you in the next one, peace. For the first question, we could differentiate between anomaly carries and crit DPS, but most anomaly teams nowadays are played in disorder compositions with an additional support and not a stunner in the third slot. Which means this is, fortunately for us, mostly irrelevant. So let's skip all of the math. Some of it is on screen right now if you're interested, and the results are basically the same across all teams with only minor differences. The TLDR here being the new set is absolutely better than basically all of the previous options, with a small twist. Some deadly assault bosses feature daze mechanics, such as Bringer, UCC or Typhoon. Because these are mechanics, that also means it is not possible to effectively calculate those while being somewhat accurate for all of you. The better you play the mechanics, the more it will influence your days. For Bringer, you might want to skip the hand phase because it costs time, but also interrupting the hand will provide a large portion of days, about 30% in fact. Typhoon really wants you to parry, and UCC has close to no parries, but instead grants days for every impair. Enemies like Pompeii provide a lot of parry windows, but 4-piece Shockstar does not actually affect parry days. As you can see, there is a lot of variance and mechanics to take into account, which is why I would always highly recommend you to go into Deadly Assault or Sheer Defense and test for yourself whether or not you gain an additional or a faster stun window using 4-piece Shockstar, and whether or not that actually also leads to a better score or time. Simply because it depends so much on how you play. Generally speaking, however, purely in terms of theoretical team damage, a 4-piece Summit is easy to use and provides more damage to the team than Protopunk or Swing Jazz do. Because the buff is team-wide, it also buffs the damage dealt by your stunner itself as well as your support. Hence, I would highly recommend you to farm the set for nearly every single stunner in the game, with two possibly slightly more nuanced exceptions. Trigger is a special case. Her uptime on her EX special is low, and that means you either have to use a chain attack on her to trigger the set, or use her EX special right before the stun window, which means you are wasting either a lot of days for her or a chain attack from a DPS. You can somewhat mitigate a little bit of that when playing with Astra, as she can provide chain attacks, but it will still not provide a great uptime on the set either way. If you are able to hit 3 stun windows while using your Tartarus shots during the enemy stun window regardless, Summit will be the better choice, but this highly depends on the enemy lineup, the team you are playing Trigger in, and of course also yourself, how you are playing Trigger. Effectively, using Trigger to weave in additional basic attacks helps with her energy regeneration and also daze application, but not everyone wants to be that sweaty with her. Another special case is Pulchra. Her aftershocks are considered special attacks and not EX specials. This means she runs into the same problem as Trigger does. Either trade daze for the damage buff during the stun window, or use a chain attack on her, which means one less chain for our carry. To summarize, while it is usable on Trigger and Pulchra, and especially with Soldier 0 MB who profits a lot of crit damage and also shares yet again part of that again with Trigger and Pulchra, it is not necessarily their new best in slot set, simply due to them having to trade effective days for the set's uptime. While their set choice largely depends on you and how effectively you can use it, at least for all of the other stunners, a 4-piece Summit is by far their new best in slot set. But again, if you are highly skilled and are looking to min-max your stuns and damage buffs, especially versus bosses featuring daze mechanics, I would always recommend you to double check your inflicted daze yourself, as it highly depends on how you play. This is even more true for Trigger and Pulchra. And with that, let's talk about the last question. Can a set combination of 4-piece Shockstar Disco and 2-piece Summit lead to another stun window? I would like to answer this question a little bit more nuanced as well, rather than with a simple yes or no. Dealing higher days also means you are front-loading your stun windows. This can be a positive, but potentially even a negative. There's a lot of nuance when it comes to this, as having an earlier stun window might mean you are missing out on decibels on your carry for your first ultimate. Or you haven't collected enough resources yet, just as on Evelyn. And it yet again will also depend on the boss, their resistances and weaknesses, and of course their mechanics. While running a 4-piece Shockstar with a 2-piece Summit right now might not give you an additional stun window on, for example, Lighter versus Pompeii, it might does when playing Trigger versus Typhoon, and it might not give you that stun window versus UCC. But what if you are now suddenly running Impact in slot 6 on Nicole now? Maybe now you do get that additional stun window. My point being here, Daze is such a nuanced mechanic and often driven not only by the player but also by boss and stage mechanics, that I don't think there's a good generalized math where I can simply tell you yes or no. So what does all of that mean for you? For most players, I would recommend you to get a 4-piece Summit for your stunner, as it is not only better than, for example, a 4-piece Protopunk or Swing Jazz, but also a very safe and reliable damage gain. Summit's conditions are very easy to fulfill, and it will provide you a reliable 30% crit damage at nearly all times, while still giving you 6% days. If you are a min-maxer, you might want to have a look into a 4-piece Shockstar Disco and a 2-piece Summit combination for very specific teams, layouts and bosses, but I would not recommend it for the average player. For Pulchra and Trigger specifically, they do not make as much use out of these sets as other units, but they can still come out ahead if you know exactly what you are doing, or might also find a niche when paired with Soldier Zero NB, as she will not only again profit massively of the crit damage, but also shares a portion of it yet again with your Trigger and Pulchra, effectively resulting in a 40% crit damage buff for all of them. So to actually answer the question in the thumbnail, should you farm the new sets? Well, again, this is my personal opinion, take it or leave it. A 4-piece Summit can be a 1.5 to 3% damage gain for the team compared to Protopunk or Swing Jazz, while also increasing your days. Given your units are reasonably built, of course. If your units are built not too well, the gain will be larger. If you are farming for yixuan set regardless, it is worth saving good pieces and slowly replacing your old set. I personally would not specifically go out of my way and farm Summit for a damage gain equal to 1 substat roll on average. On the other hand, however, it is also a safe way of getting a damage gain on your team compared to rolling another 10,000 battery in the hopes of gaining 1 better substat on your main DPS. And with that said, we are at the end of the video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this video has been helpful to you and you now can have a better decision on whether or not you want to farm this set for your stunner. Don't forget to like, subscribe, join the Discord, and a massive thanks to my Patreon members. I appreciate all of you and wish you a great day. Peace.